Oh God. So filthy good.
Namibia's new president made global headlines by expelling over 500 Americans without negotiation. Not because of war, not because of sanctions, but because they broke visa rules. And for the first time, someone actually enforced them, her. Name is Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, the first woman to lead Namibia, and one of the few leaders in Africa today treating sovereignty like it truly matters. But why open her presidency this way? What bigger fight is she preparing for? Let's find out. On her very first day in office, Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah skipped the symbolic speeches about hope and unity. She didn't pose for glossy photographs or bow to the establishment that had delivered her the presidency. Instead, she walked straight into the cabinet room and issued a blunt warning. The era of comfort and silence was over. No metaphors, no handshakes, just a simple ultimatum: deliver results or leave. For decades, Namibia's political machinery had run on a rhythm of delay, bloated bureaucracy, and loyalty over performance. Cabinets grew wider, budgets leaked into vanity projects, and offices became rewards for allegiance instead of merit. Nandi-Ndaitwah didn't just acknowledge the rot, she attacked its foundation. Within days, she slashed the number of ministries from 21 to 14, whole portfolios were merged, overlapping roles dissolved, and unnecessary offices shut down overnight. This wasn't reform, it was a surgical strike on a government long shielded by political insulation. She made it clear no chair was guaranteed and no office permanent. But this wasn't just about trimming costs. It was about cutting through the fog that had allowed inefficiency to thrive for decades. In too many African governments, size is mistaken for strength. More ministries paraded as more governance. Nandi-Ndaitwah rejected that illusion. To her, fewer ministries mean fewer hiding places, and the impact went far deeper than appearances. By dismantling entrenched clusters of power, she weakened the patronage networks that once dictated policy from behind the scenes. She didn't just shrink the cabinet, she cut the strings that controlled it. Her message wasn't crafted for foreign headlines. It was directed squarely at the Namibian people who had grown weary of leaders selling dreams of development while burying progress under red tape and ceremonial speeches. In her own words, the government must now act like a servant, not a spectator. Ministers were told to abandon excuses of process and protocol. If roads remain unbuilt, if electricity fails to reach rural villages, if food prices spiral while officials sit in endless policy workshops, then someone must answer. And she's making sure the burden won't fall on the people, theirs. Another layer to this reform that many outside Namibia might overlook. By gutting the bloated bureaucracy, Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah is creating space for a new kind of state. One that can pivot quickly, respond locally, and manage national wealth with fewer barriers. She isn't just clearing desks, she's laying the foundation for something Namibia has never seen before: a lean, responsive African government that spends less time talking and more time delivering. Of course, such bold moves don't come without resistance. The old elite are already whispering, warning that she's consolidating too much power or undermining sacred traditions. But for her, tradition is not sacred when it shields incompetence. And if she was willing to dismantle Namibia's political structure in her very first days in office, the question becomes unavoidable. What exactly does she intend to replace it with? What is she trying to build, and how far is she willing to go to achieve it? Quick reminder, if you're enjoying this breakdown, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more stories on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Now, let's continue, because here's the truth: you don't tear down a government structure unless you already have a blueprint for something bigger. And Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah didn't seize power just to trim the fat. She came to redirect the lifeblood of Namibia's economy. Days after disassembling the oversized political machinery, she unveiled her economic masterstroke, an $85 billion Namibian investment plan about $4.7 billion annually, designed not for slogans or short-term fixes, but for rebuilding the nation's production base from the ground up. This was not just a stimulus package, it was a controlled detonation of economic dependency. Her administration set a concrete, measurable goal: create 250,000 jobs by 2029, in a country where nearly half the youth are unemployed. This is not a lofty dream. It is a survival mandate. But what makes her plan revolutionary is not only its scale, it's the direction of the money, and just as importantly, what it refuses to fund. Gone are the days when resources were squandered on international conferences, symbolic partnerships, and endless development dialogues that boosted donor P are more than local livelihoods. Instead, Nandi-Ndaitwah is channeling capital into the real engines of progress: infrastructure, industry, and energy. The first pillar of her plan is hard infrastructure. Not just highways for commerce, but lifelines that reach Namibia's most isolated regions, places where the state has historically been absent. By carving corridors through neglected territories, she's doing more than enabling trade. She's physically stitching the nation back together. This isn't just a transportation project, it's a national reintegration effort. The second pillar is industrial manufacturing, a sector long sacrificed to the comfort of raw exports. Nandi-Ndaitwah intends to flip that script. Her administration is incentivizing local production by building industrial parks where Namibian-owned companies, not foreign giants, process resources, assemble goods, and manufacture products for both domestic use and regional trade. It's a bold pivot that separates her from leaders who preach economic liberation while still exporting raw minerals and importing finished products. For her, real ownership begins with the power to produce, but the most daring pillar is her energy transformation. Instead of clinging to outdated oil dependency, she's betting on renewables, chiefly solar and green hydrogen. Namibia has the sunlight and the space, and under her plan, both will finally be put to work. These resources won't sit idle. They will power homes, drive industries, and position Namibia at the forefront of Africa's clean energy revolution. This is also where economics turns into geopolitics. European and Asian markets are already circling, not just for the energy, but for what Nandi-Ndaitwah has made clear: Namibia will not become a cheap resource pit. Foreign investors are welcome, but only on one condition: they must build, hire, and train Namibians. Supporters hail this as long overdue. Critics call it reckless, but even skeptics concede one point: it's precise. Every dollar has a role, every project a deadline. And with fewer ministries left to stall execution, her government is moving fast. Of course, economic plans don't exist in a vacuum. For them to succeed, the state must have full control over the resources that sustain them. While many African leaders leased that control to multinationals and foreign brokers, Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah chose a different path, one that shocked the oil industry and sent a message across the continent. If you want to build a nation, you can't rent your wealth. You have to own it, and that's exactly what she did next. In most countries, oil discoveries are a cause for celebration. In Namibia, they came with a warning. When international outlets reported that Namibia could soon become one of Africa's top oil producers, foreign investors rushed in with contracts and quiet expectations. They had seen this movie before: a resource-rich African state eager for handshakes, ready to trade decades of extraction for minimal royalties and broken promises. But this time, the script flipped. Nandi-Ndaitwah didn't greet the oil news with pride alone, she answered it with a seizure of authority. Her administration announced that the entire oil and gas sector would now fall directly under the office of the president. No ministerial loopholes, no technocratic shields, no third-party discretion. From that moment forward, every decision about Namibia's energy future would come straight from the top. It wasn't symbolic, it was surgical. By doing so, she shut the door on the middlemen and consultants who usually profit behind closed doors. She placed herself in the position to personally block, approve, or rewrite any foreign oil agreement. More importantly, she signaled to global markets that Namibia would no longer be a passive supplier of crude. It would demand its seat at the table as a producer, processor, and global player. To drive that point home, she ordered a feasibility study for a domestic oil refinery not foreign-owned, but a Namibian facility on Namibian soil under Namibian law. The principle was simple: oil will not leave the ground unless it leaves value behind, and that's only half the story. While many African states still debate basic petroleum laws, Nandi-Ndaitwah is steering Namibia toward a dual energy economy, one that extracts fossil fuels, yes, but simultaneously leads Africa in clean energy innovation. At the heart of this vision is her flagship project, green hydrogen. Namibia has already signed preliminary agreements with Germany and other European nations to develop this fuel of the future. But under her terms, this won't be another donor-driven experiment. Foreign interest must align with Namibian jobs, infrastructure, and ownership stakes. For her, green hydrogen isn't just energy, it's leverage, and she plans to use it. But Namibia's transformation doesn't stop at hydrogen, asterisk.